Where was I at?
Are they for us shutting down, or are they not for us shutting down?
I tend to have plan A, and plan B is just plan A harder.
You sure about that?
We'll talk about that in a minute. Beached whale on the...
Thankful that God provides.
Professionals and be investing right now to help serve churches.
And let's talk about ministry, and let's talk about how we can serve God and do what God has us to do. My name is Sam Brock, work here at Ironwood. It is a full season or year-round camp that serves both youth and adults, has a capacity of somewhere in the about 300 range. So would be a larger camp in a sense.
Mike Herbster from Southland Christian Ministries in Ringgold, Louisiana. We have a year-round facility as well that similar to Ironwood, and adult events and obviously summer youth events for junior camp, teen camp, and family camps. And then we also run a Bridge to Campus ministry with Maranatha Baptist University. That's a year-round ministry as well.
How long have you been at the camp now?
I've been the director since 2008.
Okay, so some experience there. Go ahead.
Yes, John Mendoza with Camp Loma de Vida in Edinburgh, Texas. Definitely a smaller regional camp. Probably about 120 kids a week, something like that. We'll run about 550, 575 over a course of a summer, and been there since 2004. Accidental camp director, I call it. I was voluntold to go and help out for a little bit, and then it turned into this is my 17th year. So, yeah.
You still use that recruiting process,
Yes.
voluntold?
Yes, that's exactly right. So yes,
That's good stuff.
Hey everyone, my name is Philip Drake, director at Mount Lusan Bible Camp, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. About the same size camp as John's camp. We'll run 120, 125 a week during the summertime. Kind of a twofold ministry for us. We have a gap year program and counter revival ministry, so that's wearing a lot of different hats throughout all of that as well. But we have about 20 young people in between high school and college that we are mentoring and trying to help move along towards career paths and ministry and all of that. So enjoyed that.
So a couple of these guys, I know that as I've worked with them in the last year or so, a couple of them have tried things or done things and worked it out. So I hope some of those will come out today. So let's just start in. I guess I'll start us off with a thought or an idea, and this is just free ranging. We're just all over the place on successes and failures during COVID, and I want to hear both success and failure. Some of the failures encourage me the most because I'm like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. I can't always relate to all the successes that you're talking about. But here's one thing that we did that was really helpful, especially early on with our staff. And we have a decent sized resident staff, but we talked to everybody about how to watch the news. And watching the news has such an impact on, so I was amazed how easily I was swayed by what's happening. And so, I'm watching the news and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's all gonna fall apart, and I'm like, no, wait a minute, I need to kind of work through all of that. So we told our staff, don't believe speculation. The world lives in fear because they don't know what's going to happen in eternity. People that are in the news have an agenda, both left and right, and you've got to understand what their agenda is. I personally had to limit my news intake. I'm back at home, I'm all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, less than a half hour a day, and it's one of these things that's kind of builds on it. When you've had too much of it, you keep on wanting more of it, and I'm like, no, I gotta have less. So I know this is an odd one for what we did with COVID, but we just really talked about how to watch the news. Somebody else?
Well, I think that was very important too. I mean, maybe you guys felt this way, some of the audience as well. But you felt like you had to be on the cutting edge of what your state was doing, what your city was doing, what the country was doing, and so you're constantly evaluating how the balance between being horribly strict with the COVID restrictions or being horribly loose. You don't want to be either one of those, and I definitely think it was somewhat of in my position as a failure, to be honest, because I was like constantly wanting to be like right with the government it's because I didn't want to get shut down or something. And I think that wasn't actually the right approach. Not that the decisions that we made were mistakes necessarily, but But I think that there has to be a little bit more of a balance in how we were approaching it, especially now that we're seeing that we're a year into this. And so I think that's very important to know what's expected, but know how to balance it with the appropriate mindset of having to move forward in the ministry.
Yeah, we had that struggle as well. I mean, as we moved through the springtime, even trying to determine, I think everyone was trying to determine, is there anything possible during the summertime? Can I take all these laws and all these, and some people are calling them laws, and some people are saying they're just hardcore suggestions and all this stuff, and trying to have that balance of understanding that people were on both sides of it, and you could draw a line. You're always going to make somebody unhappy with whatever line you drew, and I think one of the things for us was actually talking to families that we knew that loved the ministry and finding out where they were and what they wanted from a camp still. And we tried some, just to get feelers out there, we put some weekend Saturday events on, which we had not typically done. Just to find out, is anyone going to sign up for this stuff? And obviously trying to follow regulations and things like that. And we were getting really, really good responses from that. So that gave us a good barometer for where some of the people were at.
And I guess I'm going to start with the failures. I tend to have plan A, and plan B is just plan A harder, stronger, like go at it harder. And I think that going into the
So what you're saying is you don't have a plan B.
Exactly. Plan A stronger. And so, yeah, I went into summer kind of with that mindset, and so we jumped in saying, hey, we're going to have camp no matter what, and we were bringing staff flights coming in, everything the week of staff training week starting off. And we had a couple of staff members come down with COVID while on campus during the first day of training week. And so just, required us to totally have to do everything. And at that point, Jason, my program director, my brother and program director, myself had been in direct contact with all those guys and just totally threw us for a loop. And it was like, okay, we need plan B. And I'm like, well, plan B is plan A, but just harder. And it's like, what do we do now? So definitely it was one of those scramble, and really threw our whole summer into a loop by that point. And I really learned the value of really needing to think through plan B and plan C a little bit better and have those at least down the ways a little bit more. And I think I come out of COVID with a little bit better understanding of needing that, having that presence. So.
It's interesting because because you have all the different scenarios you could plan for, and then you don't have enough time to plan for all of them. Mm-hmm. So I found myself planning for the worst case scenario and then the best case scenario, and then trying to, and neither one of those happened. It was somewhere there in the middle. But it was like I had at least thought about what would happen if that didn't, if it was worst case. But I felt like planning was the hardest part. Like one of my daughters asked me, "How are you doing, Dad? Like, how are you really doing?" And she's kind of a perceptive one. And I said, well, normally in the classes on trusting God, you have different things that you use in order to trust God. And for me, planning is like one of the things I think I can do better. But in this situation, I couldn't plan at all. I was not good at it. You just had to go day by day, willing to adjust to that day. And I would get frustrated because every time I had a plan, I'm like, okay, this is just a plan for a week. It's okay. It's just a plan for a week. And then something would happen, and it just really blew it up. So not many plans for me.
And the changes were just happening. Boom, boom, boom. One plan today is not going to work tomorrow,
I think fielding all the questions from all the constituency, all the churches, the pastors that are calling, some that are very, very ready to come to camp regardless of the COVID, and then others that are really, really wanting to know, are you going to wear masks? Are you going to separate? Are you going to social distance? How many water fountains are you, putting out, spreading out? And all these specific questions. Then you have all your staff, and then you're dealing with summer staff that were already slated to come. I think having to deal with all of that communication on top of, the responsibility of making the decision for the camp moving forward. And we had that same situation that you did, Sam, where you plan for the whole summer, and then you say, okay, well, we can't do June, so let's plan for half summer. Okay, then we get to middle of June, and we can't do July, so then we plan for no summer, and then you're stringing your summer staff along and all of your churches, and And it was just, there's no doubt it was a trying time, for leadership for us, for us in our ministry, and for me in particular. And the stress of that kind of surprised me, because I'm not the type of guy that typically gets stressed very, very much. But that stressed me out. I mean, it was very good for me. I would say that was a success that God taught me a lot out in my own personal life of how to handle those type of things that are completely out of your control. I like things in my control, and the Lord taught me that He needs to be in control, and being uncomfortable needs to be comfortable. And I listened to a podcast, I believe, while I was doing some maintenance work, actually. So I was out roofing or hauling gravel or something, which is very unusual for me at the camp, because I'm usually doing all the director stuff. And not that I don't like doing that, but I was listening to this podcast, and I can't remember who it was by, but that was the title of it, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I was like, that's, God knew I needed that.
Yeah. It's you see it with the campers or with the churches that you're working with. The uncertainty creates almost everybody freezes, like they don't want to make a decision. So we're still dealing with it now. Although we're starting to see that they're coming where they're saying, okay, we just have to plan a calendar or whatever. But that uncertainty makes everybody just stop and wait to see what's going to happen next. And this has been like a year of stop and okay, what's going to happen next? So. We have found that we have to be willing. A camp that I might have canceled in the past because nobody is at it. You're like, okay, there's 3 people coming. Maybe we should cancel this, and we're 4 weeks out. All of a sudden, in the last minute, things are happening, and I'm like, that never happened before. But not everybody's not dealing with the uncertainty that they're dealing with now. So I felt myself, like you were saying, saying, oh, in this uncertainty, no, I need to wait a day or two to make a decision. When in reality, I needed to make, at some point, I've got to make some choices. I can't just wait, frozen in indecision because of uncertainty. Like I've got to decide something. Tell me a little bit about maybe some of your financial. Is there anything that you did that was helpful financially? Anything you would look back on and say, okay, that wasn't good? One of the things I shared with a number of the guys, I might have shared it in a Tweakage email, that when you're in this spot, hindsight is 20/20 and foresight is 50/50. And so I can always look back and say, oh, I should have done this. But looking forward, it's always a hard thing to figure out. So I'm looking for us to kind of look back from a financial standpoint and say, this was a good idea. This wasn't such a good idea.
Well, we were fortunate enough that we had come off a big construction help and some donations towards construction. We were able to convert like a percentage of that towards the COVID debt or the COVID shortage and that kind of stuff. And I think, we were finishing a staff house at I think March, April. I think we had one of our staff members move into that. And I think through that whole process, I learned that maybe I should have made some stronger cuts shorter, like a quicker, and I think that was kind of part of the learning curve of just understanding it's better to be on the overly, conservative side of knowing, hey, if we need it, it's going to be there, rather than keeping going forward with some of the construction stuff. So that was kind of my experience and some of that on the financial side, for sure.
Yeah, we were really blessed to receive a really good sized grant from our county for nonprofits. That really helped to defray some of the loss from the summer before. But like everybody else, we were cutting building projects that we've been trying to replace all our cabins in our circle and doing 2 every year. And it's like I really have wanted this project to be done for a long time, and knowing, okay, can't do any of that this year. And then just trying to decide what are the other cuts, and, some simple stuff like, do we need to use that building? We normally have staff meeting in that building, but this one's already being heated. Why heat that up for that? And those kinds of things that you just have to make those little cuts here and there was helpful for us.
We were having definitely like almost weekly board meetings with our board. We're a board run oversight of our ministry, 501c3. We're not attached to a particular church like some camps are. And the board gave us the freedom to utilize the PPP and the if we desired to put some of our staff on unemployment for a little bit because we weren't having camp at all. So we took advantage of that. That was a huge blessing. We also had the Lord blessed in miraculous ways with giving from churches. We had a group that gave us a matching gift that we were able to match, and just miracle after miracle. I mean, you go into it with knowing that what your loss is going to be, and each of you that had to shut down understands that. And God taught us to just trust Him. He owns it all anyway. And we continue to work on maintenance-related issues, buildings, and money that we had for projects that were already in process. But knowing in the back of our minds that the loss was going to be pretty large, and just watching God miraculously do that. We also took advantage of some natural resources that the Lord brought along this last year in 2020, and we had some timber that even we didn't know we were going to cut it, but somebody approached us and bid out our timber, and we got a really high bid on the small amount of timber that
Are
we
you the
took.
reason for high construction costs?
Maybe so. I don't know, but we'll take it. Yeah. So and then in our region, they're still currently fracking gas wells, and we'll see if that continues with the new administration. But they utilize some water out of our lake, and it came during the summer. Actually, we were approached in the end of the summer in August, and that was a huge help to our loss. They paid us basically for our lake water, and then the hurricane filled it right back up. So literally 2 days after they finished, the hurricane came in, and in one day we gained 4 feet of water back in our lake. So that was amazing. So the Lord was good, but taught us a lot in concern to stewardship, that He owns it all, that we don't have anything to worry about. If God's in the ministry, then He's going to provide for the ministry, and just to patiently watch Him work and grow our faith, and that's what He definitely did.
I think that's an interesting process. There's an interesting balance here that I'm going to trust God, and I'm going to always trust Him to provide, but I have to make some of the adjustments. I can't just kind of act as everything was the way it always was. So we found ourselves saying, we went into a gear here that we called max conserve, and we just said, okay, this is different than what we normally do. So if you want to spend money, here's how it works. And we just kind of went into a whole different way of operating so that we could conserve as much as possible. We parked vehicles, we stopped doing some things that we would have normally said. We're saying, this is different. This is a different gear that we will get into. And Max Conserve had a huge impact on, we just didn't spend as much. And we said, okay, there aren't going to be campers here, so we cannot afford, it took us a little bit of time just to turn off every thermostat and turn down everything and think through those buildings that we don't need now, that we're not going to have camp for a while. And I think that's what we have to be willing to move to, that, to change to those sort of things, or else very quickly you'll spend kind of the way you've always spent.
And when the budget is good, I think we have, and maybe you guys do the same, but we're always trying to create more games, programs, all the big stuff. Like what is going to be the new big exciting thing? I think if I could share a failure with you, I think just my personal attitude towards that was a failure. That I was complaining, blaming the government, and I've learned through the process the government is not the enemy here, but what it forced me to do.
Are you sure about that?
We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about it in a minute.
I'm kidding.
No, you're right.
Could depend on what state you live in.
That's true.
But where was I at again?
You were frustrated with not the new game, not the big edition.
Yeah, and what it forced me to do was to instead of thinking, okay, I have to create new and bigger and better, it forced the creative side and to go, okay, what was awesome 10 years ago that kids here have never seen? I don't have to create everything brand new. I can bring back, I can recycle this. And not that I want to do that every single year. We always want to be able to build and to create more better, but that has helped me through this process.
And I found in this situation, whenever we have been open, that's what everybody's excited about. Like, we're here. Like they don't need the new bigger. They're just happy that you did something, that you did the work to try to be open.
Yeah, we had 2 years ago. So this is pre-COVID, but 2 years ago we had a week in Pennsylvania. It rained all day long, every day for an entire week. It was in my mind as a program guy and a director, I was like, this is the worst thing ever, But it forced our staff to change normal schedules. Everything was different. And as I look back on that, I've asked some of those campers, that was the best week of camp we ever had. I mean, the smell on that property was so bad, but it's because it forced us to think outside of the box. And I think that's what COVID's doing right now for us is that you have to think outside of the box and just get some of those creative juices flowing.
Yeah. Let's talk about government for just a little bit. I would say that just a short while. One of the things that I've learned in this whole situation, and maybe reminded of, might be a better word, but our government is messy and doesn't work real smooth and real well. And that was the goal of the founding fathers, to not give too much power to any one person. And so we get a little frustrated that somebody just doesn't tell us what to do. But honestly, I'm happy that there's no one person who gets to tell us what to do. Right. That would be a king. That would be a monarch. And so I'm thankful that our government has chosen to kind of split up the powers, and we have a judicial system and all of that stuff. That so it feels like in the last year we're kind of little citizen, like youngest kid, and everybody, mom, dad, grandpa, aunt, aunts, everybody's arguing. They're all arguing about what little kid should do, and all of them keep telling us. Mom says, dad says, grandpa says, and you're like, who do I do this? And so it was helpful for me to realize, no, it is the design of America that no one government has enough power. County, state, federal, they all share in this, but that's the way they wanted it. So no one guy could say, this is what you do. It makes it hard on us as little citizen to figure out what we're going to do, and we have to figure out how we're going to, okay, am I listening to mom, or am I listening to dad, or maybe grandpa knows better, and we're trying to figure it out. But I'm okay with that. Sometimes I grouse about the things that are actually good, and so that was a helpful thing in my mind to say, yeah, it's not pretty, and there's all this stuff. Why can't they get their act together? But I'm actually thankful that there's all these people that get to comment, and no one person does it. So, what else on government? How did you guys work through?
Well, it's horribly confusing, number one. And they change with the wind too.
And with fear.
Yes, and I think we have a Democratic governor in our state who, everybody's waiting to see what the governor says, and that's, I'm sure, all the other states, and you got a great one in California. Just kidding. He
signed my recall papers.
Good. I would have too. But our governor, he's a Christian. He's actually a Christian man, but he's a Democratic governor, and so he's not as bad as some of the other Democratic governors. But I just think the challenge was, okay, the good of the camper in mind. At the beginning, my mindset was more like, okay, this is a big deal, and it is, and so not taking away from the big deal of the virus, and that we don't want to spread it, and we don't want people to die from it, and we don't want to be the cause of, campers going home and giving it to their grandparents or sponsors, pastors, or somebody getting sick at the camp. So I think at the very beginning, we definitely felt more serious about it. That sounds bad, than we do now. But I think over time, as we learn, and even as our government has learned, and as we hear the flip-flop of masks, no masks, masks don't do anything, double mask, triple mask, and all the different things that, and you figure out that, wait, the government and even the health department and the CDC, they don't really know all the details of what this virus can and can't do either. So everybody has to kind of just do what they feel like is right. And so, we're at this point, we still are serious about the safety of our campers, but we also know that spiritually they need to be at camp, and the churches want them to be at camp, and we want to open up. So we take the precautions necessary and say, look, if you're a church that doesn't want to come to camp because you're fearful of the virus, then they make the choice not to come. but we're not going to be the ones that say we're shutting down. I mean, obviously the government can walk in and shut us down. We think that could happen. We hope it doesn't happen, but the health department could come in and say, you're not doing this, 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 and this, and this. But I don't know if they're going to do that. Haven't seen them do that to the businesses that are open and the places that aren't wearing masks in our region and things like that. So it's definitely unbelievably challenging to know exactly what to do and the decision to make. But at this point, I think that's kind of how we're moving forward. But I was on the phone with somebody that was directly under the governor, and they were literally telling me, we don't know what you should do. So it was like, okay, if they don't know what they're going to do, then why do I have to follow that CDC guideline to the T? If they're saying that they don't even know if we have to do that, then we're going to take that as let's go forward with camp. I don't know if that made sense to anybody, but
Yes.
it's a struggle.
In our area, I think it's a blue county, definitely, as compared to the state of Texas being red, but the county officials weren't really as involved in the process at all, but more our area, being a heavily Hispanic area, Hispanic news was just really pumping this up, and has to this day, actually. And so you get a constituency that probably was from the very beginning much more apprehensive. And so even though we were pushing forward, probably our constituency wasn't there. And then when we ended up needing to back off, it wasn't as big of an issue, other than like going back to Plan A and Plan A harder, was that throwing all of our finances to try and get everything ready for camp. And hindsight, I probably should have managed that a little bit better. But our area didn't have as much of an issue with that as far as government interference and that kind of stuff. It was more on the constituency side of it, more than the government itself. Even to now, we could be doing stuff if the constituency would respond to it, but right now it's more of the constituency that definitely is still very much apprehensive.
Yeah, maybe John, you experienced this as some of the others, but getting on the phone with somebody that's asking you, what are you going to do about COVID? And in your mind, you're like, are they for us shutting down, or are they not for us shutting down? Do they want us to wear masks? And you're like, you want to throw it right back at them and say, what do you think we should do? So sometimes I would do that, but it's really a challenge, because you never know. People's mindsets are so different with what's going on, and some are more fearful than others, and some want to do more than others.
Even right now, we're finding that difficult, because in Pennsylvania, and maybe this happened in your states as well, but last year they literally waited till the week before camps were opening to say, oh, you can do all this now, and no one was ready and couldn't spend on a dime. So even when those questions come in now, what's your stance? Well, we've heard nothing from the state, and
Right.
I think they're probably going to do the same thing again. How do you prepare for that? How are you going to respond to CDC guidelines and stuff? And that's a really hard question to tell people, because, and we're offering refunds on registrations if they're pulling out because of COVID, that kind of thing, just so it eases some of the people's, am I going to lose my money if I don't end up going?
In this last, probably this last month and a half, 2 months, my standard answer to some of those questions, like, well, what are you gonna do, is I just let folks know, as a camp, we serve churches, and I take the question of what Ironwood is going to do back to a question of what churches should be doing, or what they are going to do. And then the problem is churches are all doing it a little bit different. Right. And I've got to be comfortable with that. So I can't get frustrated at a church that's not doing it exactly the way I would want. But there are churches, so there are churches on both sides of where I'm at. There are churches that are like, it's nothing, just go. And then there's churches that are, still not even meeting. And so, but as a camp, we serve churches. Therefore, how can we serve those churches? And I found that when I'm working with a pastor and a church because that group is all a body, that they have a kind of a culture within their group. And if we are clear about where we're comfortable being here, then they kind of compare that and say, okay, we can use your camp, and they jump in. So I think a church, no matter what the crisis, has responsibility to worship, has responsibility to be a body of believers who encourage one another, have the responsibility to disciple, and we fit a lot. We can help with a lot of those facets that a church does. And so, so when a person asks me, I'm like, if a church is meeting, then so will we. We'll put a meeting on for a church, and we kind of take it back to the core of what this is all about. It's not a camp meeting. This is a church event. This is what a church is doing. It isn't just camp and fun and games. So, did we even answer the question?
You want to talk more about government?
It's hard to talk about.
Probably
That's
for
crazy,
me,
that's for sure.
Yeah, probably for me, I would go to who's your enforcing officer, who has the ability to enforce. And so the person who pays the bills to the guy who's carrying the guns, that's I need to listen to that. So in Family of Camps, we're in all different spots in Family of Camps. So I'll hear from the different guys and what's going on. And we've all done different things, basically based on our county. The county, because they pay the sheriff, because they pay the inspector, that's where you see, okay, that's Mom said. I need to pay attention to that one because they're an enforcing officer, which means they're trying to do their job, the best they can, and I want to try to help the best I can. But I also know that I serve churches, and that those churches are doing God's work, which is in the words essential because it's eternal. So, okay, successes, failures, anything, wide open topic. Yep, go ahead.
I'll jump in on this one just real quick. I felt like for me on the family side, it was the one success. I felt like I've got 4 boys between the ages of 14 and 7. And this was, first summer of their lives, the 14-year-old or ever, that we were able to do like a little family getaway. I saw Matt on Mike on Facebook went to Yellowstone, and I'm like, we're going to Yellowstone, and so we copied Mike. And no, but my kids were just like, it was I think first week of August or something, but usually we'd be either exhausted from camp or finishing up camp season, and so being able to do something like that, and I think my wife was just like, a couple weeks there in the summer was just like, wow, we were able to actually have, and it's it's part of what you get with camp ministry. You understand that, even going into it, that's the reality of your summers. But the kids being in school and everything else, and normally it's just you go from school to summer camp back to school, and it's just you squeeze something in between there. And so being able to just have a few more family days, and a little bit more time to pour into my small cabin is what the way I took it this summer. So, just being able to bond with them and build into that, I feel like that was the success of.
I'll bounce off that just a little bit too, from this standpoint of we utilized the unemployment, which was for the whole month of July, and I actually started I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know like what I was supposed to do, so I was like, I'll try it first. So I started actually a little earlier than that with my family, and then we put everybody on unemployment for the whole month of July. And honestly, most of our staff made more money on unemployment than they did whether they were working at camp. And then we told them to go take a couple weeks vacation, go see family, go. And I would echo that it built morale for our families and for our team. And one of the successes is that we have a stronger team as a result of going through this COVID time than we did. And I have found the value of the team much more. And it was a success for me to be able to see that momentum continue, even though we were shut down. And so everybody was able to have extra family time. And at the end of the summer, when we started back into the fall, we after July, so in August, we hired everybody back, and we had a little term that we said it wasn't really unemployment like they were losing their job. It was job with lost unemployment with job attached, I think was how we were saying it. Because of COVID, we were able to take advantage of that. And so everybody was really spirited because they had rest, they had family time, they had a little more money in their pocket. And so the morale of the staff came back. And I thought that was a real good success that came out of it. None of us had ever had summer vacations like that, and been able to travel and do some things with our family like you were saying. So, and at the same time trying to minister as well. So that was definitely a kind of a win that we weren't expecting out of the summer.
My kids are so over hiking at this point.
Yeah.
We hiked so much, but it was good.
Cindy and I were like, man, I've never been home on Friday night, like this many Friday and Saturday nights. We're like, we ought to go somewhere. they can't go anywhere. So trying to go out, and then nothing to do. It's just like a new thing. Now, I will say that we had a staff member who went through all of that and came to a conclusion that camp wasn't for them. They're like, I just really enjoyed not having campers, and you're like. But it was where that person needed to be. Like life was so busy all along that they hadn't had time to kind of think about where they really fit, and I think it was a good move for them. But it was kind of that break where all of a sudden I had more time to really think about that. Good. Anything else? Successes, failures?
I think this next thought was maybe driven by a little bit of fear that out of sight, out of mind for campers, that we were afraid that if we were not in front of campers that, one summer off would be all they would need. And that's probably not a good way to think. But, so we started trying to hammer the social media a little harder. We were doing some devotions for campers, which we had never done before via social media. Some little, kind of one we called one up Wednesday, which was just something fun for kids to do. They're stuck at home all day long, can't do anything. It was one of those just weird program ideas. Here's a challenge, one up me. So I drop the ball, it hits 4 pots and goes into a cup. And so we're trying to generate more interaction on social media, and it didn't work great. There was a little bit. I don't think we stuck with it very long, but we did get some engagement from campers, which was, that's fun, obviously. But that was driven, I think, by a fear that we were going to be out of sight, out of mind. And so I don't know if that's a good way to think or not. But
I think one of our successes for sure was the opportunity to take some ingenuity and innovation with technology, and we did a full week of virtual camp.
Okay.
And I think the young people that participated, and then churches that participated, just really, really enjoyed that. And it kept them connected to the camp during the shutdown, and all the kids are at home. So some of the church groups were actually bringing the whole youth group for the virtual camp at the church and doing it that way. And then there's others who were sitting at home, on their own computer or a phone doing it. And it was a real success, and it actually challenged us as far as technology-wise and doing something virtually like that, and showed us some more opportunities that maybe we should be taking from a virtual standpoint, which I do think is something that all of us can keep improving on, is doing what we can to utilize technology appropriately to minister to the needs of the campers. So I echo that too, what Phil said.
I think that through this, that we had to just keep on being comfortable with to push as hard as we could at what we were able to do. Right. And so to not get frustrated at what we couldn't do, but to say, what are we able to do? And we were able to run about half of a summer with campers, and part of it was a church that called us up, and they just really wanted camp for their kids, and but we still didn't have any. It wasn't clear what we were able to do for overnight camping. But this church called us up and it says, yeah, but you guys can do day camp, can't you? I mean, we'll get a place in Barstow. We'll eat at McDonald's for breakfast. We just want you guys to run day camp. And it got me thinking, wait a minute, we can run day camp. Now, I didn't think of a camper wanting to come, and travel and do day camp here. And wait a minute, we can be a hotel. We can do short-term rentals. So we changed the whole, the way a kid pays for camp. So they pay for day camp when they arrive, and they pay for their hotel room when they go. At 10:30 at night, we tell all the campers, well, you're back with your church people, and you all have cabins there. And anybody who wasn't able to bring an adult, they could rent a counselor from us. And, that's cool. And they had supervision that way. And then we would welcome them the next morning. We'd be, welcome back to day camp. And it was 7:30 in the morning, and we were ready to start. And we went the whole summer like that. knowing that it wasn't totally, I don't think the way they intended, the government intended for it to work, but it was what they said we could do. Like they said we could do that. So I'm going to take whatever step they will give me until I don't have that step anymore. And we knew that we were probably just a visit or two away from not being able to do that, but we took the steps that we were given. And they would have a little phrase our county does this little phrase. They share all the rules that are out there, and then they say, and then please apply common sense to the application of all of these rules. And we're like, okay, that's the sentence we need. In 105-degree weather, it's not wise to wear a mask because of heat, and for the health of our campers. Heat exhaustion is the one thing that we have to deal with the most. We're going to do that. And I think that has to be done in a situation where you are really believe that you're not putting kids at risk. Now, if I were in a situation where so when our governor came out at the very beginning, March 15th, he predicted that 8 to 10 million Californians would die. That's what he was afraid of. When he thinks of that and he's talking about something, I'm afraid of that. And so it made sense for us to be separated and to do all of that. But when we get 8 months into it and we realize that 0.0001% of the deaths that occur were in kids 17 and younger, we were in a spot where like, okay, this is when you're starting to weigh the risks and the rewards. I'm going to take the rewards. If I got so scared about somebody's health, we wouldn't have bunk beds, we wouldn't have a lake, everybody would be padded as they got here, we would serve baby food to everybody. There are inherent risk in just going to camp, and so we know that we need to manage those risks. We know we need to be careful. I would just encourage everybody to continue to do what you're able to do, and that has worked well for us so far.
And to be reasonable with the measures that we can take. I mean,
Yep.
there's some things that might be a nuisance, but they're easy to do.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I would say that taking the precautions is a good piece. That people they recognize that we're not just ignoring it completely. There are some things. We started a little fund, our COVID fund, separate in a whole budget line, so that if we were doing things that were in order to be COVID compliant, we would just charge it all to that. So it didn't affect our regular budgets, but we had that other one there. And finances, we could talk about that a little bit too, in raising funds or money. I think that this is a time where you need to share what your need is. I think that you need to share your need realistically. So you have an ability in a crisis to share a need in such a magnificent way that people are like, oh no, the camp is going to close down. What are you going to do? But so you can't be a spectacle, but at the same time, you need to share what the needs were. I was a little scared because partway through, I'm like, wow, the giving is up more than it's ever been. We've been clear about the needs, but what's going to happen at the end of the year? What's going to happen? Because everybody's already given. We just have a God bigger than that. Right. You know what I mean? People can give and they can give more. And I need to share that need kind of clearly. I need to not cry wolf on finances, but I also, I need to share what the needs are. I can't just ignore it. Anything else on the fundraising side?
I just feel like it was a real blessing, and it grew our faith as a staff to see the churches and individuals who came and helped support the camp during a difficult time. And that was an encouragement to basically all of us that they believe in the camp, they know the camp is important to their ministry, and so it brought a lot of encouragement to each of us as a staff. But I totally agree with you, just being transparent and honest about the real needs and what you're going to be using them for and how the camp is doing. It was just helpful it was a challenge to me, but helpful to just be able to clearly communicate that to our churches and to the individuals that gave.
Yeah, we got hit with a hurricane in July, so we had just gone through, the loss of COVID. Then we got hit with a hurricane, and I echo what they're saying as far as God is bigger for sure. And I think, you almost come at some of your donors and you say, oh yeah, we needed this help. Oh, and we need this help. Oh, but like you said, it is just being clear about what the need is and being able to say, hey, here's how this would be a help. And I'm with you as far as the recalibrating, saying, okay, this will get us to this point, and then seeing God extend that and be able to supply that need. But at the same time, the need to communicate that, try new things. I know we're in the process of trying to look at new ideas as far as fundraising and things like that compared to what we had done in the past. So
we had COVID, hurricanes, and now we have ice.
that's right. That's right. Yes.
Have a
We got
camp in the
ice,
desert.
snow.
Pipes bursting.
You need a camp in the desert.
That's right. Now we need desert.
With Newsom.
Yes. No. We stopped short of
That would be a trial.
Fundraising for the future. This is an interesting one. So let's take our last 2 or 3 minutes here to give your thoughts on what the future holds. My wife asked me, so how long is this going to last? Asked like I know, and so I give her all sorts of different answers. And really, no, I have no clue. But we have to make decisions based on our knowledge at this moment. So I'll share first some kind of what I'm thinking in the future. I do think COVID is something that we will live with for a long time. I do think it's something that will be a part of our culture. It will be kind of like the Depression in eras gone by. You will recognize that certain people lived through this in different ways, but I don't think it changes what the goals are of a church. I don't think it changes the relationship that people need, that relationships need to be built. I do believe that camp does things better than a lot of other types, like camp is a critical thing that a church can use to help build relationships. So I think there is a massive room for camp. I think when it's been taken away, it's like for a moment there here in California, we didn't sing. And it's like, whoa, I'm not a singer, but I really enjoy, everybody singing together. It's like a really important thing. And I didn't realize how important just being together as a group was and fellowshipping until that's taken away. And I think that's what happens in camp. I think we have an opportunity in our planning meetings, which, what can you plan? We're going to either be bigger than ever or it's just going to totally crash. It's like, I don't think it's just going to be here. It's going to go one way or the other. And I am hopeful that we have an opportunity that people will realize I've got to, camping provides something that just nothing else will, and churches will be revitalized to the use of the tool of camping. So I'm actually fairly positive. I think we still have some interesting things to write out. I think that our government is spending so much money right now. There's going to be economic things to pay for somewhere down the line. That'll be rough. I don't think we'll see it this year. I think it'll be all slush this year, but 2, 3, 4 years, I think it'll be a little rough. So we need to plan accordingly, recognizing that we paid a lot to get through this. But I'm fairly upbeat about what churches will realize camp is a really valuable tool for us. Anybody else?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist. I think you said that about yourself as well. I'm getting the sense that we're going to have a rebound and that we'll have a very successful summer as far as our attendance, and then we have a master plan that we're seeking to work through as far as trying to develop our property and facility to get it back up to where it needs to be, because it's an old facility, and then adding new things for our growth and things. And I sense that the Lord is going to continue to move that way, but we're ready for whatever He allows, for sure. But just this last week, we had 4 or 5 churches. I think it was 4 churches that were brand new churches that were calling me the camp that they had been going to, which was more like, we're going to get a group of churches together and run our own camp. Well, that camp is totally shutting down now, and they're looking for a place to take their young people. And that was just one of the situations. And so I'm just getting the sense that the kids need to be at camp, and the churches and the pastors and youth pastors are seeing that. This fear has troubled kids like crazy, and then having to stay at home and do school all the time. For homeschoolers, they're used to that, but they all homeschooled, and they're ready to get out. They're ready to do something. They're ready to get back to, okay, normal. It's a new normal, And COVID is real, and I agree with you. It's not going away, but just like any other sickness and other inherent risks. But I'm very positive about it, maybe to a fault at times, and that's something I've definitely learned. Maybe be more reasonable, but I do think that camp is important, and obviously all of us believe that, right? So that God's going to make a way, and that we're going to be there for the future.
And I think for Camp Loma de Vida, we're just looking at it and saying, well, we'd rather be ready. And if the constituency doesn't respond, we can say we were ready. As compared to 2020, I won't put all my eggs in that basket and necessarily make all the financial investments towards the summer, but definitely at least be prepared to a certain extent. And I think that, like you guys were saying, I mean, I think we serve a mighty God, a powerful God. It's going to, for us as a small regional camp, it's going to cause us to be very creative and a lot of flexibility through that process. But I believe that I would rather be in a place where, hey, if God allows it, we're going to be trying to do the best we can to serve camp in 2021, and we'll see where God takes it from there.
Anything on the future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic like the rest of you guys as well. At the same time, I think we'll be pretty cautious moving forward the spring, even into the summer. Just not knowing what the administration is going to do moving forward in the next 4 years. Who knows? And not that we depend on that entirely, but that does affect the way we can act. But despite all that, it's funny that you mentioned the timber thing. That exact same thing happened to us a few years ago, and so much more came in than we thought was going to come in. And we thought we were going to initially have to use it for a swimming pool, and the swimming pool had a major leak in it, and estimates were like $100,000 to fix it, and it was like, where do we have that kind of money? And changed one pump, and the problem went away, and we were just praising God, and I was like, all right, let's keep that money. Something's coming. And God gave us that money for a reason, and just to see Him provide in those ways. So optimistically moving forward to the future, but knowing God's got this, and He's going to bring it about in sometimes very creative ways.
In this episode, we're dealing with a broad range of topics here that deal with COVID. There is a part 2 to this episode, a different set of 4 guys that will also just be sharing on this broad topic. For the studio audience here, we're dismissed, and stores are open, and you can get those. We start again at about 11 o'clock, probably a few minutes after.